Hi everyone, Diablo Immortal is about to launch very soon and I want to prepare you the best way possible. One important step in your character progression and customization is acquiring set items. And if you're already used to them from other games, for example Diablo 2, Diablo 3, then you will know the concept. So you equip multiple pieces of the same set and they gain extra benefits for having those combinations equipped. So the way this works in Diablo Immortal is very different from, for example, Diablo 3, where set items are completely defining your build and there is very little customization. Instead, in Immortal, there are 8 different sets and they all go into dedicated slots on your left side of the inventory. So instead of the rare yellow items, you will be able to eventually fill all those slots with green set items that have higher stats and those set bonuses for having a certain combination of those items. The good part is that those set items are not competing with the primary equipment that you have on the right, where you will usually put legendary items once you have found enough of them. And so you have this distinction between the set items giving you certain combos and the legendary items that give you spell effects. And what those set items look like, you can see here in this post by Echo Hack. He spent a lot of time trying to find the sources of every single item. And he also has a nice little overview here that you can go check out. And what you need to know about those set items is that they are not class bound. And you can actually mix and match different sets because they all have a 2-piece, a 4-piece, and a 6-piece bonus. So you can have 3 different sets of 2-piece bonuses. You can have one with 2, one with 4, or you can have a full one with 6 out of 6. And there is not really necessarily a clear winner for every single class. There are definitely some sets that are more tailored towards certain classes than others. And there are some that are just very generic bonuses that might help you in the typical farming scenario or the typical PvE boss fight or something that is more tailored towards PvP. But in general, it definitely makes sense to go look through all of those sets, get a bit of a feel for what they do. It will also help you to understand how other people build their characters, what you will encounter in PvP, and just what's in the game so that you know what to go for. And more importantly, the exclusive source of set items is gonna be dungeons. So once you have finished the campaign, once you have reached max level, you start blasting the endgame content. You also want to just get in some dungeon runs as much as possible to acquire those set items here. And they only drop in Hell 1 and Hell 2 or higher. So these are the endgame difficulties that you unlock after finishing the campaign. Once you're level 60, then you can switch to Hell 1 difficulty, which is, so to say, the starter difficulty. So you will be able to acquire those 3 slots in the bottom, the gloves, the belt, and the boots very early. And then a little while later, once you are ready for Hell 2, you will be able to get the rings and amulet slots as well. So this means that for the start of the game, you will be able to grind up a 2-piece bonus, but to get the 4-piece and the 6-piece or a combination of different sets, you will have to wait until you can actually do Hell 2. Now to explain how exactly this Hell 2 difficulty will unlock will be a bit too much for this video, but you have to know that it will take some time, probably around 2 weeks or so, to get to that point where you can comfortably do Hell 2 difficulty. And the thing is that when you find those items, they will have random extra attributes that can roll on them, as you can see here. So you have primary attributes that can roll 1 up to 3. Then you have the magic extra attributes that can roll 1 to 3. And you also have sockets that roll. So all of these stats actually matter quite a bit. And it's not just about the set bonus itself, but it's also maybe you just find a really well-rolled item that has such incredible values on it that you will use it and actually break one of your set bonuses. Because they're not really all that powerful in most situations, but they can make a certain combo. They can really emphasize a certain playstyle. But it really comes down to, what items do you actually have available, because you won't be dropping them left and right. The cool part is that there's a weekly rotation of dungeons that give extra drops. So you can see this buff here. And this means that you can kind of target farm this dungeon or that dungeon a bit more during a week, you'll be way more easily finding groups for it, and you will get more drops so that you can focus on certain items that you really want from that dungeon. We have a list with the dungeon guide. So here are all the dungeons, all the strategies, even the builds for the classes. And you can also see which dungeon drops which items. If you want to look here, this is like the overview per dungeon. And the same way, you can just go in the set items post and you can see the list here with the location. And the set items always drop from the final boss. So this was done to incentivize you to actually finish those runs instead of just farming like a really quick boss over and over. Now let's go over those set items, and there's different set bonuses, and I'll give my input on what is their best use case so that you have a bit of an idea of what to look out for. Keep in mind that those are data mined values, so those sets were actually completely different in the beta, and what we can see here is actually completely untested. So just wanted to give that disclaimer at the start. Let's start off the Feasting Barons pack. This one gives you 30% crowd control duration, which is very powerful, especially in PvP when you have stuns, slows, immobilize. All these kind of things actually matter quite a lot. It is mostly a PvP set in my opinion. And it also gives you extra damage for hitting crowd controlled enemies. So this is a pretty cool combo. The 2-piece and the 4-piece bonus in particular. In my opinion, the 6-piece bonus with this Ice Nova when you defeat an enemy, that seems kind of out of place here. It does go with the crowd control theme, but it has a cooldown of 40 seconds and requires you to actually finish a target, which, well, at that point in PvP, it doesn't even matter that much anymore. So it can definitely be nice if you get a killing blow in a battleground and suddenly you freeze the entire enemy team, but I don't think you can really rely on that. And I think that you will mostly see the 2-piece and the 4-piece bonuses being used together. I could also see this being used in PvE, for example for challenge rift pushing when you go in a group and you have one very supportive character that focuses a lot on stacking crowd control duration, on stacking crowd control effects, so they can slow and stun enemies. This is something that I can definitely see work out, at least at the 2-piece bonus. And then maybe have some other like a group buff effects that you're gonna see later from the other sets. And that could actually make a pretty fancy support setup. All in all, Feasting Barons pack seems like one of the weaker sets to me, and something that mostly shines in group play, for example in PvP, or maybe in high difficulty challenge rifts. Next up we have Grace of the Flagellant. This is actually a very strong damage set. So we have the 2-piece bonus where all continual, channeled and persistent ground effect damage is increased. So this means that you have maybe Consecration from the Crusader, or you have some channeled skills like Whirlwind, and all of those skills will deal more damage, which is already quite nice. 15% is no joke. And you have the 4-piece bonus that can proc an extra damage effect after hitting an enemy 5 times. Which, with those ground effects, for example, that you just put once and they will start ticking like once every second or so, will actually stack up very frequently. It will also be quite strong for AoE builds when you have many enemies at once and you actually have abilities that can hit all of them at once all the time. Even with rather weak damage, you still get this damage proc and you can get a lot of extra value in there. And again, on the 6-piece bonus, we have a 40-second cooldown damage proc, which is quite powerful with the 1700 base damage here, and also has a stun, but it has a rather low proc chance of 4%. And while this is probably still better than requiring you to defeat an enemy like on the previous set, I think that it will just be way too infrequent to really be worth it, even though you can have like a nice little burst when it actually happens. So again, I think that especially the 4-piece bonus here is very strong, and the 6-piece is rather on the weak side in my opinion, something that you probably don't really want to go for. But this set is definitely going to be a staple in some builds that use those channeled or ground abilities or some kind of damage over time effects, because you will be proccing this 4-piece bonus over and over, and it will lead to a lot of extra damage. Next up we have Issatar Imbued. So this is a very interesting set, especially for solo farming activities. You gain lots of extra movement speed on a 2-piece bonus, and you gain extra damage based on your movement speed on the 4-piece bonus. So those two set bonuses definitely go together really well. And then again, we have one of these 40-second cooldown procs on the 6-piece bonus. But in my opinion, this is so far the best by far, because you get this orbiting soul orb, and I guess it just like swirls around you and continuously deals damage to everything around you. So especially when you are farming very weak enemies in outdoor content and you're trying to do like your daily quests basically, this will be incredible because you're fast and pretty much everything around you dies by default. So this is the idea of the set. You go fast and you defeat weak enemies really quickly. So I think this is going to be one of the top contenders for solo farming builds for pretty much all classes because of this extra movement speed bonus. Movement speed and movement abilities are kind of a precious resource in Diablo Immortal. You don't get very much of it. They have long cooldowns. So any kind of speed improvement is huge. Next up, we have the Shepherd's Call to Wolves, and this is by far the strongest set in the game in my opinion, but it basically only works for necromancers. So this seems to be kind of like the locked-in choice for necromancers, pretty much entirely. I actually believe it's gonna get nerfed, but you can see those set bonuses here, they are pretty incredible. First of all, your summons deal 15% more damage baseline, no conditions attached. Then you have this critical strike chance increased for each of your summons, up to 18%, so 18% crit chance is also a lot. And you can scale that even further later on. And then you have the 6-piece bonus, which is absolutely massive. So you have again this 40-second cooldown proc, and it gives you a 10-second 100% attack speed and 100% damage bonus for your summons. So necromancers in general are really focused on their summoned minions, and this is essentially completely multiplying all of your damage done. There are definitely other ways to play Necromancer without summons, but this set alone makes those summons extremely powerful. And when you consider this 10-second duration of the 6-piece bonus giving you effectively a ×4 on the damage done by your minions, this is actually incredible. Especially in fast-paced content that has very short and infrequent fights, this is incredible because you can basically have this 10-second buff for the entire duration where it matters without having the downside of the cooldown. There are definitely some dungeons where, for example, you have a bit of like a waiting time, so this gets completely out of control there. And for example, in PvP, when you engage an enemy for the first time, suddenly all your summons are gonna be massively powerful. So while this can also be countered with, kiting away or CCing them, I think it's gonna be incredible for necromancers. Next set is the Untouchable Mountebank. This is a very interesting set, and we don't know 100% if this is actually correct, but it seems to have 3 times the same set bonus, giving you a shield proc. And the thing is that in Diablo Immortal, healing and shielding are also very rare resources. So typically you have your health potion that you can use once in a while. In PvP you don't even have that. You have a bandage that you have to try to run away into a corner, and then you wait 10 seconds until you're healed a little bit and you can jump back into the fight. And this set gives you insane amounts of shielding. So every time you take damage, you have a 20% chance to gain a shield that is 30% of your maximum life with a 9-second cooldown. And if those set bonuses work the way I think, which is you have separate shields with separate cooldowns, each giving you this 20% chance to get it, I think this can be incredible for survival. Especially when you're doing extremely difficult content like challenge drift pushing and you want to pull together 100 different enemies. This is going to be really big, and this will help you to stay alive so much. The same thing goes in PvP when you are someone who likes to jump into the fray and engage enemies first while your teammates shoot in from the back. Then this will also be very useful, very powerful. And the choice of name for this set is definitely very appropriate. I think in general this set will also help out people that have maybe some trouble in certain PvE content, like some boss fights from the Heather Curry or the raids. And you will just be able to equip this set and you're gonna have lots of extra shielding, and you don't have to dodge every single mechanic all that much anymore, because you just gain a lot of extra HP throughout a long fight. Next up we have Vithu's Urges. this is a very interesting set, and this will be mainly useful, I believe, for monks and probably the crusaders as well, because it has increased duration of beneficial effects for you and your party members, and an attack speed buff on the 4-piece bonus for buffing some other party member. So obviously this is designed for party play and mostly for classes that can actually buff other players. So something like Shield of Zen comes to mind on a monk, for example. And this 30% attack speed buff is definitely no joke. So usually you have like one really high single target DPS guy in your dungeon party, for example. And if you continuously buff that one with extra attack speed, it's going to be pretty incredible. And maybe this 2-piece and 4-piece bonus actually interact with each other so that this 3-second buff is actually 30% longer. So it would be 3.9 seconds. And in that case, you can almost give it up permanently when you cycle 2 skills back and forth. And then comes the kicker, which is a 6-piece bonus, which gives your whole party a 10-second, 15% life drain buff. And again, with a 40 seconds cooldown. Now, in certain boss fights, there will be a lot of incoming damage and a lot of mechanics you will have to dodge, and you have to preserve your health potions. But there will also be those phases where you can probably just shoot into the boss, and you will be able to heal up with this lifetime mechanic very easily. So with this limited healing you otherwise have, this is a very powerful tool to bring to a raid for any kind of boss fights that are very difficult, and you will be able to just keep everyone alive much more easily. Especially when you're in a scenario where you actually slowly take damage over time and you can take a few hits, you can use this set to support your party and everyone gets back healed to full. The next set is the War Rags of Shal'baas, which is a primary attack centered set. And this will be mainly useful for Demon Hunters and Necromancers because they actually have quite powerful primary attacks compared to all other classes. So first of all, they deal more damage, 15% on a 2-piece bonus. Then you have the 4-piece primary attacks gradually increase your attack speed up to 25%. So we don't know exactly how long this lasts or how long this will need to stack up, but I guess that you're just gonna reach the cap pretty quickly. And then you have the 6-piece bonus, where again you have a 5% chance to proc extra attack speed for 10 seconds with a 30 seconds cooldown. Again, we don't have any values here, unfortunately, but I imagine this 10-second proc is going to be very powerful, somewhere in the range of 50 or more % attack speed on top of everything else, and it's just going to become an absolute machine gun. So this is what I imagine for the set. I think this is going to be definitely the #1 choice for Demon Hunters in groups when you're doing raids, when you're doing bosses and dungeons, because usually Demon Hunters are the #1 single target damage, mostly through their primary attack damage. I believe for typical farming activities and PvP, this is not really going to be the choice, but you're definitely going to keep this set in your bags when you're playing DH or Necro. And finally, the last set is Windloft Perfection. So this is also an incredibly powerful set, pretty much for all classes, especially the ranged classes. You can see this here. The 2-piece bonus gives you this 1000 winds buff, which gives you 15% movement speed, which is very nice. And this buff deactivates for 3 seconds when you take damage. So as long as you can kite enemies around and you don't get hit by anything, you'll get faster movement speed, which is amazing. Then you also have 20% damage on the 4-piece bonus while this is up. So again, while staying out of harm's way, you will be faster and have more damage. And then you also have the 6-piece bonus that gives you an immunity shield for 5 instances of damage every 40 seconds. So you can kind of easily keep this up through this immunity buff. So you don't actually have to dodge every single little projectile that comes at you. And as long as you can kite enemies without taking any hits, most of the time you will be able to keep up those buffs. So this is something that will be quite difficult to use, and it will also only have very specific use cases, I believe. But I can definitely see this work out really well in challenge rift pushing, especially when you're solo and you're playing something like a wizard or a necromancer, like something where you can kite around and you are trying to get up many enemies and just stay away from them, run faster than them, make sure you don't drop this buff. And I can actually see some strategies revolving around just never taking any damage through this immunity shield. So you can go full glass cannon and you can try to just never have anything touch you, but it will be very difficult to do. I guess it will require lots of attempts, and it will also not be very consistent. But theoretically, this is an option, and I'm personally quite excited to see what this set in particular will be used for. Because this shield has a fixed count of 5 damage instances that it blocks, it will also be incredibly powerful for certain boss fights, I believe, especially when there's no random AoE pulses or some kind of little effects that go on and will deplete your shield. So if there's only those big hitting abilities, you'll be able to completely tank them. You're invincible 5 times. So this will also be very useful in some PvE encounters there. In my opinion, definitely one of the most interesting sets in the game so far. And this concludes the guide. Hope you enjoyed it. Subscribe for more Immortal content, and I'll see you guys next time.